coming out on such a miserable night. It's tough to get out when the weather's like this, but thank you for taking time and taking seriously the issue of education in our state. We're glad that you're here. Before we get started, I'd like us to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let me first start out by thanking Mike Smith and the Limestone County Democrats for sponsoring the event tonight, along with the Athens State University SGA, the American Association of University Women's student group here, student chapter here at Athens State, and also Forward, Alabama. So thank you again for bringing the forum here again tonight. One of the things that when we talk about education that gets linked, I think a lot of times, is with economic development and economic activity. And to me, the foundation for economic activity is having great education. And that's the issue that we want to talk to and address here tonight. And education, I think, is the foundation for economic growth here in our state. You have to have an educated populace to attract business and industry, and that's an important feature, I think, that we need to focus on again as part of our state. And we have a panel here tonight, I think, that's uniquely engaged in a variety of levels in shaping and creating policy here tonight. Before we get started in introducing our panel, I'd like to sort of lay out how the forum is going to work tonight. What we're going to do is we're going to take questions from the floor, and they're going to be written out questions. And so each of you should have received a card of some type and a writing pencil or a pen to write out the questions. We have members of the student chapter, the AUW, that are here that'll be collecting those questions. And so I want you, while we're introducing the panel and giving them a few minutes to give some opening remarks, if you take a few minutes to write down a question, and then we'll collect those right after the opening remarks, and then we'll go ahead and read those and give the panel a chance to speak and address each of those questions. So be thinking about what you want to ask and put it down on paper, and we'll collect those here shortly. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Bob Glenn, the president here at Athens State University, and Dr. Glenn will introduce our panel. Dr. Glenn.
Thank you, Henry White, for the checks in the mail. I appreciate it. I am Bob Glenn, and I am president so far. I'm glad that you're here on our campus. This is really kind of the essence, in my mind, of what a university brings to a community. It is a place where people can come and share ideas, and you can have frank conversations, and you can think seriously about important issues. So we're very glad to be the place that you chose for this forum, and we're glad to have each of you on our campus. We are a very working person's kind of institution. We are glad to be a part of our region and our community. We're glad to have you on our campus. Now, my job is to introduce the panelists, and I'm going to do that here in just a second. I'm going to ask, when I finish introducing the panelists, for them to start at the far end with Representative Ford, and we're going to ask each of them to give just a couple of minutes to make an opening statement. While they're doing that, I'm going to slip out of the way and enjoy this with the rest of you. So without further ado, let me start at the far end. We have with us here tonight Representative Greg Ford of Gadsden. He's a member of the House Education Ways and Means Committee. We have Representative Lynn Greer of Rogersville, who's a member of the House and the House General Fund Ways and Means Committee. And I also want to take just a moment of personal privilege and thank Representative Greer publicly. And some of you may recall, about 5 years ago, we took legislation to Goat Hill to ask for this institution to be allowed to become an autonomous state institution. We had a lot of opposition, but one person who was there for us was Lynn Greer, and we would not have gotten that legislation through without him. So I want to publicly thank him for that. We also have Larry Lee, who is a writer and blogger on education issues in Alabama. Dr. Michael Sibley, who is Communications Director of the State Department of Education. and Clint, who's the General Counsel for AA. So gentlemen, welcome to our campus, and we'll start down with Representative Ford and take a couple of minutes to give us some opening thoughts.
Okay, well, hey, this is great, and War Eagle anyway. I'm married an Alabama girl, so I can cover all ends, okay? But I want to tell you, thank y'all for having me and inviting me up to this area of the state. Lance Latham, our Chief of Staff, was in the back, and it's quite a drive to get up here on 278 when you had a cataract surgery and detached retina in my lifetime, and it's hard to see the reflectors on the way. I think I scared him to death. But I want to tell you, we're at a crossroads in the state of Alabama when it comes to public education, and especially not only just in the classroom, but in the four-year schools and post-secondary, but also with our educators. I spent 14 years in the military as an officer. Your most important asset is your morale of your employees, or your morale of your officers and your enlisted men. Every time I visited the classrooms over the last 4 to 5, 6 years, I've seen the morale continue to decline. We have to stop affecting our educators' benefits. We have to stop affecting the classroom, and we as legislators need to do a better job of supporting public education rather than raiding the Education Trust Fund and making an attack on our educators' benefits. So, I'm excited to be here tonight to take your questions. I will tell you this, I've been elected since 2000. I tell everybody, they ask me how I stand, I said, check our vote records. Vote records don't lie. I hope I'm 100% behind public education. If I'm not, I want you to tell me so. So I'm an insurance professional by trade, that's what I do. I tell people all the time, if I'm going to handle something in education, I'm going to contact educators first and get their opinion. Because I don't seek to be a professional in education. Now, I'm married to one and she does. She reminds me of that on a daily basis, especially when the legislature took 2.5% out of her paycheck. So I want to let you know I support you, I appreciate you, and I just thank you for the invitation.
Good evening. I am Clint Daughtrey. I am General Counsel for the Alabama Education Association. On behalf of President Sheila Remington and all the AEA staff and our members statewide, I want to thank you for inviting me here. Thank the President for making this facility available to us. And to echo some of what Representative Ford said, public education is the backbone of the state economy. We recruit industry based on the quality of public education. The overwhelming majority of students in Alabama every day go to a public school. And while AEA is made up of teachers, support professionals throughout the state, all of them are in the profession of education for their students. So public education is AEA's business. We pride ourselves in being the staunchest defender of the Education Trust Fund. And while things may change at AEA, that is not one of the things that will. We will always be there to defend the ETF because that is what is necessary for our students to have what they need to succeed in a 21st century economy. So again, thank you for the invitation. I look forward to comments.
Well, good evening. I'm Larry Lee, and I'm delighted to see all of you here, and honestly surprised to see such a good turnout, Phil Williams. This is, if this was in Montgomery where I live, I'd probably be at home in front of TV, not getting wet on a night like tonight. But I'm delighted you're here. I don't have a wife, a job, or a dog, so I'm not with anybody. I'm retired and have a passion for public education. I started my career many years ago after I left Auburn, and I'm a proud Auburn graduate, and I'm glad to tell y'all that I'm proud to be a graduate of a university that emphasizes academics and not athletics. Now, we didn't always intend for it to be that. But I had a career in journalism and then got involved very much in economic and community development, particularly in rural development. And would like to echo something that Rick said by telling you a quick little true story. I was the economic development person for Covington County, which is down on the Florida line. Andalusia is the county seat, and my family is from that county. How many of you have ever been to Florella, Alabama? Yeah. Very good. Florella is right there on the Florida line. We were working a project when I was an economic developer. Now, I can tell you this, ain't much happened in Florella in a number of years. Down there, heavy industry is a 300-pound Avon lady. So we were working with a gentleman, Don Wheatley from Michigan, about bringing the expansion of his plant there. And it was gonna be about 50 jobs, and this would have been a tremendous thing. And we were showing him our tax situation in Covington County, and Phil, I'll never forget it, he looked at our tax base, and he said, or he asked, he said, how do you educate your kids? You don't pay any taxes. He didn't come to Florella, Alabama. But I do think education is tremendously important in economic development, community development. I've long said there's no such thing as an outstanding community without the schools. They just don't go together.
I almost wish the panel would have started from my right so I wouldn't have to come after Larry Lee. We've gone from being friends in the education realm to I'm almost a fan of his now. I appreciate everyone for having us here this evening. It's a great honor to be here. I come representing the State Department of Education. Again, my name is Michael Sibley. I'm the Communication Director for the State Department of Education. And I can't tell you how glad I am to be here tonight and to have, like Larry said, the turnout that's here. We talked about that the inclement weather might have kept people at home, but the fact that you guys are out says a lot about how you feel about public education and how important it is to you. It's important to me. I always tell people that education is the single most transformative asset that any individual can have. It's more than wealth, more than pedigree, more than beauty, more than strength. Having an education is what I often call the great equalizer. It can make anyone into anything. Dr. Tommy Weiss has a plan for education in the state. He's going forward with Plan 2020. That is the name of the education reform that we have for the state. And the way that I like to describe Plan 2020 is like like you're sitting in this evening, like a chair with 4 legs. And it won't do if either one of those legs is missing. You need all 4 in order to have a stable foundation. The 4 legs of his education plan are, one of those legs are schools and school systems, making sure that just the physical structures, that schools are satisfactory, that they provide a learning environment that's conducive for our kids achieving academically. Another leg of that chair is parents and students, making sure that as much as we can, we get parents to be involved and engaged, making sure that students are excited about going to school, excited about getting an education, and looking forward to not just graduating from high school, but graduating from high school with the ability to move forward with their life and their career, be it a 2-4 year education that follows that, or going into the military or the workforce. Whichever route they choose to take, we want to make sure that they're prepared to do that. Teachers and administrators are another huge part of that, another leg of that chair, making sure that our teachers are well-resourced, that they have the professional development and the support that they need to provide a quality education to the students of our state. And lastly, but certainly not least, support services, the wraparound services, the things that we think about that aren't necessarily inside of the classroom, child nutrition, transportation, counseling services. Those are all very, very important in coming together and making sure that we treat the whole child, that the whole child receives an education and a life-building experience while they're in K-12 school that will carry them well on after they graduate from high school. I'm looking forward to a robust conversation this evening about education. I love talking about education. I'll try to keep my comments limited because I know we have time restraints. But I'm excited to have all of you here this evening. I'm grateful that you have us come up and talk to you tonight. Thank you very much.
I'm Lynn Greer. I'm a neighbor from over to the west, Rogersville. I represent the western part of Limestone County, and Representative Phil Williams from Huntsville here tonight. He represents the eastern part, and he and I have been in a meeting all day in Montgomery in the pension program. My background, I electrical engineer from Auburn, and got 10 grandkids, and I lost all 10 of them to Alabama. You know, I thought the youngest little girl, I knew I could have her. No, her 2 older brothers were Alabama fans. I've got the 3 10 grandkids, 2 are at Alabama, one's over at University of North Alabama, 3 are in the Huntsville city system, and 4 in the Lauderdale County system. So I've always supported education. You know, you look back at my record, grew up in a rural community, and, you know, when I was growing up, we had a good school system in Rogersville, and fortunately I was able to survive through that system, graduate. But, you know, I'm glad to be here tonight, glad to talk about education. You know, we'll discuss any subject that comes up. Maybe we can find some mutual common ground.
All right, thank you, panel. And we'll go ahead. Again, this is your chance to put a question together. They're collecting them, and we've got something to get started here. And we'll go ahead with the first one here. And this is for all the panelists. We just want to open this up to you guys. What are your thoughts on combining the general fund and education budgets? And why is the education budget the scapegoat for balancing the general fund budget? Who wants to take that and start running with that?
I don't mind taking that one at all. I think it's a horrible idea. I really hope that the idea of combining budgets is something that we don't have to deal with again, although there are concerns about that. As most of us know, the last legislative session, there was a pull on the Education Trust Fund, $80 million that came from the Education Trust Fund to help stabilize the general fund. That is what I call a temporary solution to a much more perpetual problem. You can't take money from education and use it to prop up the general fund when education itself is already underfunded. We had $80 million. No one wanted to give that $80 million up, but we were facing circumstances that could have been $225 million. And one of the things that happened with the $80 million that was taken, borrowed, if you will, from the Education Trust Fund, is that there were mechanisms put in place to backfill that money so that while we did what we had to do, I think the Education Trust Fund went above and beyond what it should be expected to do to support the general fund. And educators, there are probably plenty in this audience, as educators often do, when faced with higher expectations and fewer resources, they rise to the occasion. Such was the case with the Education Trust Fund. But fortunately, when it happened this time, we had some revisions to the rolling reserve fund and some revisions to what we call the use tax. Use tax is things that are bought outside of the state but used in the state. We had to make some minor revisions on that, but hopefully if there's no proration, the rolling reserve is put in place as a savings account so that in case the state encounters proration, we have something to fall back on. That has been tampered with. Hopefully we won't have any type of proration anytime soon. But the money that's taken out will be replenished and then some. And that was sort of the compromise that the State Department made, as if they had much room for compromise, but that was what was done so that we could help stabilize the general fund and move forward with an education budget. But I think the idea of combining the two would only put the Education Trust Fund in more of a pickle than it's already in when you consider the fact that our schools are underfunded, teachers are underpaid, and a lot of the critical resources that we have that should be readily available to children are not. And I hope that we maintain our sovereignty by being able to keep the education budget separate and aside from the general fund.
I'm not shy about sharing my opinion on this issue. I believe it would be a travesty of public education. If we combine the two budgets, basically then we'll have a $6 billion education budget with a $2 billion approximately general fund budget. Combine them into one. What comes out of the general fund budget are your three main issues: Medicaid, prison systems, and your highway systems, with a lot of other non-educational items. You know, that's the reason we were in two special sessions last year, or this year, calendar year, was to try to figure out how to fund the general fund. Ladies and gentlemen, the Republican legislature passed a bill called the Rolling Reserve Act. It was set up to prevent proration. We have not stood by that law 1 year since it's been enacted into the legislature. We have violated that law. We've passed language every session to violate that piece of legislation, to draw money out, and to violate the statute of it. However, it has created a second savings account for the state of Alabama of up to almost $1 billion. I think that's $1 billion that needs to be put back into the classroom. That's how math, reading initiatives were formed, distance technology, textbooks, digital textbooks, the iPads, everything comes out of the Education Trust Fund. We already have a savings account. It's called the rainy day account. So why we need 2 savings accounts is beyond me, and combining the budgets would not be a positive thing for education in the state of Alabama. If we want to create jobs, and they continue to say that if we combine the budgets, we'll help create jobs in the state of Alabama. Well, let me tell you how to create jobs, and if you want to change the pattern of what's come before us with our forefathers, let's start investing in public education in pre-kindergarten. It is proven that it makes a difference. Let's put a pre-kindergarten class in every elementary school. That would make a difference. Let's take the money out of the Rolling Reserve and let's put it in pre-K. If you want to invest in our jobs and our economy down the road, it's not going to happen in a governor's 4-year term or a governor's 8-year term. It's a pattern. It's a process. So we're going to have to invest in our pre-K and change our philosophy and continue to try to raid the Education Trust Fund. We need to start supporting the Education Trust Fund and put more money into the ETF and support our public education. So.
Picking up on what Representative Ford said, I am a lawyer, so math is not my strong suit, and my career path was decided basically after I took my first freshman calculus class at Alabama. But if I've got 2 apples over here and I've got 2 apples over here, I've got 4 apples. I put them together, I've still got 4. It doesn't become 5 just because I put them together. So the fact that this budget is, I'm not going to say okay, but is floating, whereas the general fund budget is sinking, putting them together is just going to have one budget that's sinking, because Medicare's not going anywhere if we combine the budget. Prison overcrowding is not going anywhere if we combine the budgets. We're just going to have one big budget with big problems, as opposed to one budget with one set of problems and one budget with another set.
Well, I agree with what's been said. You know, of course, 48 states only have one budget, but if it ever happens in Alabama, it's not going to happen in the next few years, because, you know, like it's stated here, how can you take money that one's in one budget and put it in another when there's not enough money in the first budget? Now, I'm a member of the General Fund Budget Committee, and to be honest with you, folks, it's in a terrible, terrible mess. We got everything that has a big, tremendous growth every year is in that budget, comes out of that budget. But at the same time, there's no growth revenue in that budget. I mean, let me mention Medicaid. All of us are familiar with Medicaid. $6 billion a year in Alabama. We only have to come up with $2 billion. The feds give us $4 billion. But, you know, we don't know what to do with Medicaid. You know, if the governor goes to the next level between us, me and y'all, it's over with as far as I know. You know, he can't go to the next level unless he comes up with a funding mechanism. All of you saw what happened in the legislature this year, and I'll be honest with you, I hate to say it, but I supported most of those tax measures. They got absolutely nowhere. I handled a couple of them. But you go to the legislature and you find someone who's going to be willing to pass taxes, you're just not going to find him. And you can come follow me a week, you come to Rogersville or Lexington or somewhere else, and you won't find anybody. Everybody wants more money, everybody wants more benefits, but nobody wants to increase taxes. So that's the shape we're in, and we're in a sad shape. We got, you know, the feds could come into this state any day and take over the prison system. We sat about 190% occupied. California was not that highly occupied when they went in over there, and they let about 1/3 of them out. And in 2 years, 1/3 of those were back in prison. Then you had to go through the process again of expensive trials and there's rapes and murders, all those things. So, you know, I'm awfully concerned about what's going on in Alabama, and I'm concerned that, you know, really nobody is willing to address it.
I guess join in with my 2 cents worth, and while some people will be surprised, I will say this, and I appreciate the effort all the members of our legislature make. They are in a tough situation. And I had lunch one day with my friend Senator Arthur Orr. And of course, he was chairman of the general fund, and he and Trip Pittman are just flip-flopped. But I said, Arthur, I said, you got a hell of a problem on your hands. He said, no, I don't. We just got to figure out what we're going to cut. Well, ain't nobody wants to cut anything. My concern about combining the budgets would be the temptation. And the temptation to reach over there and get a quick fix. And listen, we all get tempted. And I just think the temptation is too great. And yet I hear people talk about, we've got such this huge surplus in education. Well, I don't agree with that. The reason we have a surplus, in my opinion, is we ain't paying our bills. We're not funding the foundation program like we're supposed to be. And go ask Tom Sisk, your county school guy, the superintendent, how much he would like to have a little more money to run his buses up here. Because that is a tremendous expense, particularly in very rural places. And add this, recently I had the great pleasure of listening to former Governor Albert Brewer from Decatur for about an hour. And he talked about earmarking. And we all talk about how so much money is earmarked in the budgets. That didn't start last week or last year or 10 years ago. The last time anything was earmarked was under Bill Graves or somebody. I mean, this was a long time ago. And the reason it was earmarked was they didn't trust anybody. Plain and simple. No, they've got a very difficult problem. But to my way of thinking, and I'll leave with this, every time I hear someone say, well, we got plenty of money, I think about visiting my friend Deborah Devers, the principal at Berry Elementary School down in Fayette County. And if she didn't have fundraisers, she couldn't keep her phones on. If she didn't have fundraisers, she couldn't pay the copy machine leases. And she has told me, I will limit my teachers to only putting 10 items on the, when you give to the young, and this is what mom and daddy need to bring to school, that our folks are too poor. 10 is all we can afford. But every time I hear somebody say, oh, they just wrote it in money, I say, well, by God, Deborah Devers don't think you are. And there's a lot of people like that around this state.
All right. Let's stay in the funding conversation here. Does anyone here foresee a change in the property tax model for funding of schools?
I'll chip in unless anybody else wants to, but, a lot of property tax is on a local issue. For example, what we did in Etowah County, we did a sales tax, not a property tax, but I think up here in Huntsville, maybe Madison County, y'all do a lot of property tax. Is that correct?
No.
And sales tax, okay, I'm not sure, but in Mobile County, I'll give you, is it Mobile or Baldwin? I don't know if you follow the news on property tax or anything, they had 5 property taxes come up for a vote. I believe they turned down all 5 of them at one time. A lot of it was how they did it. If you put 5 taxes on the ballot, I don't think any of them are going to pass. Our sales tax, you have to put on the ballot every so often, like every 16 years. And then we have to prove what the money has gone towards. I'm a firm believer in people don't mind paying taxes if they can see what their money's doing. In Etowah County, we passed, my father passed, he served 26 years in the legislature prior to me, I've been in 16. He passed the 1 cent sales tax, I extended it. We built 5 new high school gyms, we built 8 new high schools, we built computer labs, science labs, you name it, we built it.